So in stage 7 of church planting thresholds, we're going to talk about befriending your community. This is you going into a community and making friends with it. You're going to start a new church in a community. The truth is, in most communities around North America, the community will see no obvious need for this new church. Nobody's sitting around the boardroom table of their business saying, you know what we need here is another new church. They're thinking about more businesses, they're thinking about more revenue, they're thinking about more homes perhaps, more residents, but they're not thinking about more churches. Most civic authorities would prefer another park more than another church in their community. And so the thing I want you to know as you go into this community is that this is the way that your community views the church. And in some measure, that's our fault. The blame is to be put on us that churches aren't seen as any more powerful or important in communities as they are. So you need to enter your community intending to become friends with those who lead it. Have a humble and contrite heart when you go in and talk with people about the work that you're going to do, and assume that they won't see value in that work and that you'll have to win them over time with kindness. And so this whole section is about how you can approach the civic leaders and authorities and powers that be in your community to befriend them. Let me tell you a little story about myself. I made a huge mistake when I was church planting. And the mistake was this. It was believing that I could live far away from my community and still be an effective missionary and minister of the gospel in my community. So, because I was planting in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. at a time when real estate was incredibly expensive, rent was incredibly expensive, and I was living on a tiny, tiny budget, I decided to live nearly an hour away from the community I was called to serve. And so I went out an hour away and I bought myself a big house, and we had a nice yard, and I thought very simply, we'll just drive up to the community and I'll serve them and then I'll drive back home. It was so naive to think that I could make a difference in a community without actually living in that community. And so for the first 3 years of the church I planted, I commuted back and forth nearly an hour in heavy Washington, D.C. traffic to try to get to my mission field. And every time I got there and in every conversation I had, I was an outsider. And so I want to talk to you for just a minute about the importance of living on your mission field. Because it's one thing to look into a community and say, this community has problems, it needs to be fixed. It's another thing when the problems of that community are your problems. You see, you'll respond to those problems in a much different way than you would as an outsider who looks into the community with the problems. And in order for you to really have the compassion and the zeal and the access that you're going to need to minister to people in your community and to insert the gospel into the various components and sections of life that you're going to need to insert the gospel in, you're going to have to be part of the community. And so there's no way to get around the fact that you have to live on your mission field if you want to be an effective minister of the gospel. So I want to encourage you in this threshold to do absolutely anything and everything it takes to get yourself and your family on the mission field. Now, of course, I don't want to advise you to do anything unwise or certainly nothing unethical, but I want you to do everything in your power to get yourself on the mission field. You may be like me, look at your community and say, I just simply can't afford to live anywhere that fits my family. Well, it might mean that for a period of time you need to live in a neighborhood or in a house that's either smaller or maybe below the standard of living that you're accustomed to for a little bit of time until your income comes up to the point or the economy goes down to a point that you can afford to live in something that you really want to live in. But don't make a choice about comfort over the choice about serving the people in your community. You'll always do better if you place yourself right in the midst of the community you're trying to serve. The people that work and live in your community, they are all around you, and you'll have lots of opportunities to minister to them and reach them and get to know them and become their friends and share problems with them if you live in their community. So this threshold is all about, if you're on the fence, if you're thinking about, oh, it's really expensive to live there, it's really difficult to live there, that place is really dangerous, then that's not the community for you to serve. You need to do anything and everything you can to live in the community that you're called to serve.